Hey guys, this is Lucid. I've got a mod that I just made the other day, and it's called No Unscripted Buffing. And I'll give you a quick summary of what it does. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I think it needed to exist or why it needed to be made, and then we'll go into a lot more about kind of how it works and all that. So, first thing. It's basically a mod that just prevents your mages from casting any buffs off script. And at first glance, you might be like, oh, that's really bad. Or like, oh, that's really going to change the game a lot because, like, you want to cast buffs off script. Well, a lot of times, you don't really care about normally you want to do all your buffing within the first 5 turns of combat. And any buffing after that's kind of superfluous. Usually you want to do evocations and stuff after that. But anyway, that's what it is. Now, so why does this exist? Why would we do something so random as to make this? Well, there is a problem in Dominions that I think is very well acknowledged by almost all experienced players, and that is that the assassination mechanic sucks. It's cool. It's a cool idea. You know, it's cool that assassinations exist. Some people don't like assassinations just because it's an asymmetric kind of warfare. You have a really big, strong army, and you're going to fight somebody, and none of that matters because you get assassinated and die. And that is going to feel kind of shitty when that happens to you. And so some people don't like it for that, but that's actually, I think, the cool part about assassinations is that it is an asymmetric game mechanic. Why it sucks, and why it's not fun, and why most experienced players think there's a problem with it, is not because it exists. Most people, I think, like it. The problem with it is that it's extremely hard to counter. Very hard to counter effectively. Especially if you're doing defensive assassinations inside forts you control. Like, damn near impossible to counter. And if you could counter it by, like, having bodyguards or by, having your mages do things useful when they get assassinated, or, if there was gear you could put on your mages that would make them much more likely to survive an assassination, all those things would add to basically making it so there was a game behind the assassination mechanic. And what I mean by a game is that, like, it's 2 players reacting to each other and compensating. So what are the forms of balance that exist in a game? Well, you can have, like, the rock, paper, scissors mechanic. Like, I'm doing this, like, rock beats scissors, and scissors beats paper, and paper beats rock. And if you have that mechanic, that's a kind of balance, right? So, you're going to come at me with a big army. I'm going to come at you with an assassin. Okay, you're coming at me with assassins. I'm going to put assassin prevention gear on my guys. Right, and now I've countered your assassins, but because I've invested in that, I haven't invested those same resources in my army. So that's a rock, paper, scissors mechanic. And that would work in Dominions, except that the cost of making anything survive, like water bottle assassins, for example, which are kind of the most cancerous, but there's plenty of other kinds of cancerous assassins. The cost of that is so high that the assassins are kind of just, they require just such a huge, like, even when you know what they're doing, like, I know there's 20 assassins inside that fort. The cost to not getting absolutely destroyed by that is just phenomenally high. So, anyway, that is the first problem. The other way to kind of balance out a game is you basically can have an arms race, right? So, if we think of it in terms of province rating, like, there's a contested province between 2 nations. One nation could send 5 troops, and they would take it. But the other nation, anticipating that the other nation might send 5, they send 10. And if they send 10, the other person sends 5, the person that sends 10 will take it. And then likewise, the first nation that was originally going to send 5 may send 15. And if they send 15, then they'll win and they'll take it. But then you get this ratcheting up of investment, and it becomes harder and harder, and you get more and more fully committed, and at some point taking the province isn't worth necessarily committing like 100 troops. And so then you reach this equilibrium, or you're doing random stuff. Anyway, that's a form of kind of balance, and it's a game. And none of that exists in the assassination thing right now, because assassinations traditionally just murder you. So what I have done here, and I'll show you kind of the setup that we had at the beginning, but I basically, I have the mod running here, and okay, a little bit more background. Why does this mod fix the problem with assassinations? This mod fixes the problem with assassinations because some people say like particular items need to be nerfed or something, like water bottles. Water bottles have already been nerfed. They used to be size 6, now they're like size 4, size 5 or something. So you don't get as big of water elementals, and they're only obnoxious in assassinations. Outside of assassinations, nobody's saying they're overpowered. So perhaps, and there's a bunch of, and if it's like water bottle were the only thing in assassinations that were too strong, then like, okay, we need to nerf water bottles. But no. There's plenty of different ways in which assassinations can be broken. So then we're like, okay, well, why is it that assassinations are broken? Why does the attacker, the assassin, have such a huge advantage? And what it basically comes down to is a lot of times you have high-value mages, and you do not want them to die, and they get 1 or 2 bodyguards if you've given them bodyguards, but like a water bottle assassin, like the water elemental is going to eat your bodyguards. Almost any kind of bodyguard you're going to give them is going to die to the water elemental very quickly. But if your mage were intelligent, if you got to script your mage and tell him what to do, he or she would do very useful things. Like they could potentially kill the water elemental before the water elemental kills her troops. Like mages are that good. They could summon other things, like they could summon their own water elemental. They could cast swarm. They could say, forget the water elemental, I'm going to target the mage in the back with, frozen heart or something. There's a bunch of things they can do. Unfortunately, what they choose to do is to self-buff most often for the first few turns of combat. And it doesn't do anything. A lot of times, like you'll be getting assassinated by a disease demon. And what does your mage do? Well, they spend the first turn casting Body Ethereal, which disease demons have magic attacks. It does absolutely nothing to help you. Now, there's some small cases where casting like Iron Skin or something might be nice in an assassination attempt. But in reality, it's not usually a good idea, because a water elemental is going to kill most types of troops, most commanders, with Iron Skin on them just as easily as it would kill somebody without it. Because they have armor-piercing attacks. So the trick is to have bodyguards and to kill the water elemental or to kill the assassin. And it turns out that what you do in that very first turn of combat is extremely important. So what I was thinking would be the best fix is if illwinter gave you, and this you can't do through modding, but if they gave you like a 1-line script, which you could put for assassination attempts, and it's like, the knife you keep under your pillow. This is what I'm going to do if an assassin comes in, and you only get to do one thing. So there's still an advantage for the assassin, because they're kind of catching you off guard, but you have some response. And if that first thing was like swarm or summon water elemental or fire elemental, like now you have some reasonably cost-efficient, way to deal with an assassin that's going to come attack you. Now that could be if your opponent anticipates that, like if they know you're going to be summoning fire elementals as your anti-assassin thing, well, they could put fire resistance on their assassin, and that might be enough that they're mostly immune to the fire elemental, and then they chew through them, and then they get to you. Anyway, then you get to a game. So yeah, and this will kind of be borne out in tests. So now we're actually going to show you some of these. I've done like 20, all these assassinations are Star Children with a water bottle. So this isn't like a broad spectrum of the types of assassinations you could get, but it's a subset. But anyway, it's a bunch of water bottle Star Children assassins who are on advance and cast spells. That's their script. And that gives them a decent chance of casting something useful like Body Ethereal on the assassin. On the water elemental. Fighting against a broad array of 2 magic path human mages. And each of those have 5 bodyguards. So we'll see how it goes. Half of these human mages have gems, and half do not. This is an Astral 2. He has no gems. So we'll see what he does. So they're casting Starfires. And now he's casting Arcane Bolt, which is very good against magic beings. If he were to hit that, he would have a decent chance of killing or at least significantly reducing in size the water elemental. Okay, he hit there. Okay, now it's down to size 3, so it's not nearly as killy. And this is a much more useful thing for him to be doing than to cast Body Ethereal. Because if he got hit by Body Ethereal, then it would be over. I mean, if he got hit, like if he's engaged in melee with Body Ethereal, it's already over. Now, he got killed by this guy, who's basically, you know, he's an Astral Mage 2, and he cast Starfires, and that killed him. So, anyway, you can see this guy's still lost. Which, the goal is not to make it so assassins suck. The goal is to make it so they can be countered. In this case, this is not strong enough to counter that assassin terribly reliably. We'll look at the next battle. Here we've got this guy, who is a Nature 2, and he's got some Nature gems. Now, a lot of times what will happen, the AI will cast Swarm, but they don't always cast Swarm first. In this case, he's actually going to choose to do Creeping Doom, which an N2 can cast with this many gems, and this is probably going to murder these assassins. And then he can even cast it again with that many gems, so it's no contest. Now, this could have happened before, but what will happen in battles like this sometimes, and I've seen it happen, and we may pull up at the end, kind of, if you take normal Dominion's AI and you let it run, what will happen in assassinations, but, yeah, so they will do things like cast Army of Giants, which is not a thing you want to cast, or they'll do something like Mass Protection. They will cast Swarm sometimes, but they will also do those other things. So, or they might even waste a turn casting Barkskin. It's hard to predict what they're going to do, but there's a lot of unuseful things they can do, and if they mess up in their first turn, then they can just die. So anyway, that was that battle. We're not going to watch all these, but we'll watch some of them. Okay, this is another Apothecary. And this was the one from before, so he only had 1 gem left, so he could only afford Swarm. And Swarm may or may not be enough. Swarm is barely enough, but they don't kill the water elemental, they just kill the mage behind him. So, okay, another chalk one up. Now, this probably would not have worked if we didn't put nature gems on the Apothecary, so that's a little bit of kind of the game back and forth. And then they could put things like poison resistance on this guy that would make him less likely to die to Swarm. You know, or give him a Vine Shield. And then he's not going to die to a Swarm. Okay, and I didn't even see what happened here, but I know we lost here. Let's see what happened. Did we Mind Burn him? Oh, wait. Why are they casting buffs? One second. Okay, actually I just realized I didn't have Iron Will added to the mod, so I actually just went and added it. So whenever you see this up, anyway, it will have the updated one that Iron Will won't cast. And then I don't even know why he ran. That's a very weird battle. It's okay, there's still some funkiness in the AI. And I think Astral Shield got added. I'll have to check in a minute. The thing is, the way this mod works is it won't prohibit you from casting a buff. What it will do is it will severely lower the priority. So if there's any other spell you could cast, it'll have you cast that normally. I've also added, the only thing that I've added to that list that is not a buff is Flying Shards, because, well, fuck Flying Shards. Okay, then opposition hits. So these guys are also in some ways more useful because they're also not going to self-buff. But the thing is, before, you could script these guys to cast whatever spells you wanted to. You could never script a defender. Okay, so in this case, the defender also lost. Oh wait, this case the defender also lost. But these astral guys actually are kind of weak to getting assassinated. Here we've got some earth gems on this guy, so he's going to summon a lesser earth elemental, which is going to delay this guy while this guy probably does something else kind of useful. Oh, it's going to run back to the Star Child. And then this earth elemental comes out. Oh, and he... Okay, and then Shatter. This guy's dead. So this is a win. And we're not going to... Okay, we'll click through and watch maybe a few more. Maybe like a water one. It's another earth one. Let's skip down to this one. This is an air one without gems, so let's see how this goes. He's summoning Phantasmal Warrior, which actually is okay. Lightning Bolt. And Lightning Bolt's actually okay. Okay, so then he actually stunned it, and then the bodyguards lasted long enough. So this is something you would really never see if you didn't have this mod installed. And that's because he would have done things like Mist Form, Mirror Image, Air Shield, and shit at the back before he actually decided to hit the Water Elemental with Lightning Bolt. And that Lightning Bolt shocked him, which froze him for a turn, and I think it reduced his size by 1, which is going to keep your bodyguards alive a little bit longer. So there's that. Let's go... Okay, this is a nature guy that actually dies. I think this is a nature guy without any nature gems now. And he only has 1 bodyguard. So this would probably be insufficient. Like, you would not expect this guy to lose. But you can see he's doing useful things. He's not casting Bark Skin. He's doing Storm of Thorns, which, if we get lucky, the Storm of Thorns actually can freeze this guy. Yeah, he's just missing horribly, so there you go. But Storm of Thorns can be okay, especially if you've got a few bodyguards around. So anyway, he's acting kind of intelligently. And I can tell you, like, on one hand, the number of times I've been watching an assassination battle and been thinking about my mages, oh, they're doing something that, like, makes a little bit of sense. Okay, this guy won a previous fight, so he's got a bottle, a water elemental now. A bottle of water now. Okay, we've got this guy, an air guy with 1 gem, so he could summon a lesser air elemental. And this guy's probably going to jump in the back and go sit on this guy's face. A lot of times what I've seen happen because I've tested this a fair amount now, a lot of times what will happen is that this guy doesn't die right away, and then the water elemental will chew through whoever I have here and then kill this guy. So if you tally this all up, because we're not going to click through all of them, if you tally them all up, it's 11 times that the defenders killed the assassin without dying. And for some reason, we didn't have any of the mutual kill-offs, but that happened a lot when I was testing before. And then 7 times the assassin killed the defender, and then the assassin lived. And other times I tested, there were a fair number of times where both parties died, but I don't think there's any of those here. Yeah. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that if with a reasonable investment, you can counter assassins, but then if they counter your reasonable investment, like they know you're an air mage and you're going to hit them with either air elementals or lightning, and so they put shock resistance and they maybe increase size so they can't get trampled, then, they've countered your investment. So, there's an arms race, there's an escalation, there's a countering process that I think would make for kind of interesting assassinations. And in general, if you want to reliably kill mages, you're probably going to need more than a water bottle. And then if you put more than a water bottle, which, okay, now you can reliably kill mages, well, what if they have a few good mages mixed in there? Like, what if they have... Okay, we don't really have them here, but... I've got some here. So like if we took some of these, which are some of the generic summons you get, and we had these guys come out here, you know, how are these assassins going to do against, like more elite mages? And the answer is they're not going to do very well. They're not going to do very well. So here they got one. So, and these are naked commanders, right? So, and Fairy Queens are not like terribly durable chassis. But she summons an air elemental, and this is that air elemental runs in the back and kills that guy, but then she dies. So, okay. Like, that's fair. I think that is fair. Here the Sea King dies. That's actually surprising to me. He should have gems on him. Does he not have gems? Oh, he casts Falling Frost instead of summoning a water elemental. He should have summoned a water elemental, but anyway. That Falling Frost could have one-hit killed him, and then it would have been over. So anyway. Most all the time, if you have higher quality mages, it's going to kill them now. But you can see we had, I think it was like 3 out of 4 times we killed them, and then 1 out of 4 times we died. And this is without gear. And for higher quality mages, you would probably invest in a little bit more protection for them, especially if you're running them into an area where you knew there might be assassins. Okay, so I think we've covered the mod and what it does. And I think what I want to do now is I'm going to cover 2 things. One thing is a little bit more why I think it's important. In the late game, what you can find is it's very difficult to deploy thugs, because your thugs have to be able to live not against one, but against any of the remote summons. And so, like, let's say you put 20 gems on a thug, right? But it has to be the exact 20 gems that's going to deal with whatever your resistance you're expecting on fighting. It has to be able to deal with Earth Attack. It has to be able to deal with Manifestation. It has to be able to deal with Disease Demon. It has to be able to deal with oh god, what else? Potentially not water elementals. Anyway, all the different remote assassinations. I know there's more. I'm probably forgetting 1 or 2. And if you can't do that, then a 5 gem remote spell is going to kill your thug and all the gold it represented, and potentially 10, 20 gems of gear. And you would be surprised about the number of thugs who don't do very well when they get trampled to death by an earth elemental. And who are not able to kill an Ashen Angel quickly enough that they don't run in fear, half the time. And if you run in fear half the time to an Ashen Angel, you're dead. So, the remotes at least kind of cost money, but the thing is, for a lot of the assassins with like water bottle or other things, it's a one-time 8-10 gem investment, and then you kill one thing a turn for forever. So those are even kind of more egregious in terms of like how punishing they can be if assassins are overpowered. But I would say the other kinds of remotes assassinations they're very difficult mechanics to play around in a lot of games. And they don't have easy counters. It's very hard to make something survive all of those things somewhat reliably. And if you can't do that, then you can't send it out where it can be picked off without sending like a retinue of scouts with them, which is annoying. Like, nobody wants to do that. That's not really a fun way to play Dominions, is have to have scout armies running around with everything. So anyway, that is, I think, why it's important, because late game, really any game where assassins they slow the game down to a crawl. They just punish you for doing anything. And it would be fine if there were counters, because it's just another kind of asymmetric game mechanic. But if there aren't counters, you take a mechanic that slows the game down to a crawl, it really makes the game much less fun to play. So that's why I think it's important to have a fix for kind of the assassin problem. And this is the best fix that I think I've been able to come up with in conjunction with some people in the community. Now is kind of like the warning label part. So there's a few things to know if you use this. One is your guys will not cast buffs off script, like any of them. When getting this to work, I was testing it on some of the higher level mages, and at first I was like, oh, I'm only going to get rid of self buffs. But then I'd put gems on them so they could actually do useful things in combat, like the Ivy King. I would give him gems so that he would cast Swarm or Creeping Doom, and a lot of times he would, but sometimes he would cast Army of Giants on himself. And I'm like, dude. And then he would die. So I'm like, man, come on. Like, that's horrible. And then they would cast all sorts of buffs that just make absolutely no GD sense. And basically what I decided is like, look, most of the time you're going to be casting gem buffs. Like, there's almost no time you want to do that off script. You're almost always going to do it on script. So all those buffs will not cast off script. You have to actually script it, which like 99.9% of times in games is how you're going to do it. The issue with this is you don't want to play with this mod in single player. And the reason is that the AI does not script. The AI just puts gems on mages, and then the mages will fight you. So, and then they'll use the default scripting. So if you put this mod in single player, the AI won't use buffs, which obviously is not a very good way to play. So don't use this in single player. In multiplayer, though, it's not really a problem. The only thing it will affect in multiplayer that we've been able to figure out is certain level 3 thrones, where they have an army set up to basically do Fog Warriors or something. It probably won't do Fog Warriors. Instead, it'll cast something like Living Air, which is usually pretty hard to deal with, too. So it will just... I don't think it will make the throne fight, like level 3 throne fights, easier. I think it will just make them different. But it may make them a little bit easier. But I don't think that's really a problem. Anyway, I think it would make... I think my hope is, and it hasn't been used in a lot of multiplayer games yet, but my hope is that it will make assassins fun again, right? Where there's an interesting game mechanic to deal with that you can actually reasonably deal with without having to put water bottles on every single one of your mages you want to bring to a fight, you know? So yeah, anyways, I hope you guys test it out, and if you enjoy it, let me know. And especially if you use it in a multiplayer game, let me know. The risk of using any new mod in a multiplayer game is if it bugs out, it can be a little hard to fix your current game. I've tested it a fair amount. I haven't had any buggy things happen. There was an error or two in the earlier versions, but I fixed that already. So, yeah, I think it works. I've probably tested it for like 5 hours now, just doing weird little things like this. And then the other thing I tested was, you know, if you actually take a group of dudes and you run them into some province and you script them to cast some of the spells that they were supposed to cast, or that, because basically I had to modify all the buffs. So if I actually script them to cast the buffs, you know, will they cast it? You know, and the answer is they do. So like even things like Army of Gold and Army of Lead, you know, we had to take off the script. And we can do that, and then Fog Warriors. All this stuff, they will still cast. There may be a couple. There may be a couple buffs that I haven't added, and usually they're going to be the army buffs. So the mod isn't perfect, and as people give me feedback about stuff that I didn't add that maybe I should, will these guys cast luck on themselves? That sure looks like luck. Oh, it's Moss Body. I don't know if I added Moss Body. I don't think I did. We'll go back and add Moss Body. That's actually one you definitely don't want people casting off script. It can mess your dudes up. And I definitely didn't script it. So as you can see, there's a few things that need to be added, but the thing is, not adding something is not really a problem. I mean, it's not going to mess up any of your multiplayer games. It's just like one thing that may have slipped through the crack. The only thing that would be an issue if you start a game with this, is if somehow it like tweaked out and didn't work. And so far I haven't seen that happen yet. And a lot of the things that normally cause that to happen aren't even present in this mod. It's really copy and paste of a bunch of the same thing different ways. And if there's a typo, I would have already figured it out. So, you know, as I get feedback, we'll add more buffs that I may have missed. Like apparently I missed some of the cross paths, like Moss Body. So anyway, I'll add that. And then like Iron Warriors I may have missed. But, not Iron Warriors. I had Iron Warriors. Iron Will I might have missed earlier. So, anyway, I'll fix those and put those in the current version. But so far, I've probably gotten at least 95% of the buffs. And as feedback comes in, we'll have gotten them all. But I think even if it's 95%, it should be enough to start a multiplayer game and have dramatically improved spellcasting AI. In battles, because you don't really want people casting buffs in battles. You want them casting evocations after turn 5. And then way more in assassinations. So anyway, let me know if you have any feedback or if things don't work. And if it breaks your game, I'm sincerely sorry. I don't think it will, but I can't promise you because, you know, it's a mod and it hasn't really been tested in multiplayer games before. But yeah. Anyway, take care, guys.